Diego Maradona was born in the slums of Buenos Aires, but by the age of 21, he was known as the best football player in the world. He became the most expensive player ever when he signed for Barcelona. He took Napoli to their first ever Serie A, and he single-handedly won Argentina the World Cup. But despite the legacy he left, his career was a constant battle against discipline, drugs, and alcohol, which saw him forced out of Barcelona, Napoli, and eventually the Argentinian national team. So, how did all this happen? How did Diego Maradona become the greatest and also the most controversial football player of all time? This is the beautiful tragedy of Diego Maradona. On the 30th of October 1960, Diego Armando Maradona was born, and he was dealt a very unfortunate hand to begin with. He was raised in Villa Fiorito, which is a very poor area on the outskirts of Buenos Aires, Argentina. Diego was the fifth child to join the Maradona family, having 4 older sisters, and after him came 2 younger brothers, and to make matters worse, this 7-child household had to be supported by a single salary from his father, who worked at a chemical factory, whilst his mother focused on raising the children, meaning money was not something Diego saw much of growing up. At just 3 years old, something would happen that would change the course of the little boy's life forever, as he was gifted his first ever football. And that was the day the obsession began, as Diego started to fall in love with the game. He started playing for his hometown club then. At the age of 8, he went for trials at Argentinos Juniors, and he performed so well that the coaches didn't believe he was only 8 years old, so they made him bring his passport to prove that he wasn't lying. After this, the coaches at the academy realized they had a gem on their hands, and they decided to devote themselves to training him to become the best player possible, as even from just 8 years old, it was very clear that Maradona had magic in his boots. As Diego grew older, he started to get more eyeballs on him, as he soon became a local celebrity, leading his youth team to over 140 victories in a row. He was so good that by the age of 12, the senior team would call on him to perform skills and tricks at halftime of their matches, as he would leave the spectators mesmerized. By this point, it was very clear that Diego was well on his way to the top of football and was going to escape the poverty that he was born into, because at just 15 years old, he became the youngest player ever to play in the Argentine First Division, as he officially became a professional football player. 10 days before turning 16, Maradona made his debut for Argentinos Juniors and was handed the number 16 jersey. Just a couple minutes after entering the pitch, he put the ball through the legs of his opponent Juan Domingo Cabrera, which was a symbol of the greatness the world would witness over the course of his career. After this, Maradona said that during the game, he felt the sky in his hands, and things only got better from there as he continued to grow in the team. He was soon given the nickname El Pivo de Oro, which directly translates to the Golden Boy, and less than 1 year later, after his senior debut, he got a call-up to the Argentinian national team, where he made his debut at just 16 years old. To put this into perspective, Lionel Messi was 18 when he made his debut for Argentina. But despite getting better and better playing in Argentina, Maradona wasn't called up for the 1978 World Cup, which Argentina went on to win, leaving Diego with a feeling of anger and frustration, but he would just use this as fuel to work harder. Over the next few years, Maradona went on to create a legacy at Argentinos Juniors, as he went on to play a total of 167 games and scored 115 goals. But despite his individual brilliance, he was unable to lift any silverware during this time with them. But this was all about to change, as the biggest clubs in Argentina were after the now 20-year-old superstar's signature. Maradona had the choice between River Plate, who were dominating Argentinian football, and Boca Juniors, who were struggling, but like you'll see throughout his career, Diego preferred to play with the odds stacked against him and opted for a $4 million move to the club he supported as a child, Boca Juniors. Maradona scored twice on his debut and carried this momentum through the season, where he went on to score 28 goals in 40 appearances, leading Boca Juniors to the league title, meaning Diego Maradona finally conquered Argentinian football, and now he was ready to conquer world football, as the upcoming summer had a World Cup to play, and this time he got the call-up. But even more than that, he was being looked at as the man who could carry Argentina to glory, as he was now considered a football superstar. But this wouldn't go quite to plan, as this tournament would end in tears and a brutal red card. Now, the story of Maradona is one of the craziest roller coaster stories of any football player, and it's about to start getting really wild. But before that, I want to make a deal with you because I really want to hit 100,000 subscribers this year. So, if you think Maradona is one of football's greatest ever players, subscribe. If not, wait until the end of this video and trust me, I'll change your mind. Sounds fair? Okay, now let's get into Diego Maradona's first World Cup, which would end in a serious heartbreak. The 1982 World Cup was played in Spain, which added fuel to the rumors that Maradona was signing for Barcelona. But at this point, these were just rumors. Diego Maradona played in every game of this World Cup, and one consistent theme throughout was that he was being targeted tactically to try to nullify his effect on the game, and this would result in many fouls on him, which would cause Maradona to get severely frustrated. Argentina lost the opener to Belgium, won the second game against Hungary, where Maradona picked up 2 goals and then beat El Salvador 2-0 to progress to the second group stage. A loss to Italy meant that everything rested on the 5th game of the tournament, where Argentina faced off against Brazil. The issue for Diego was that this was a Brazilian super team, with Zico at the forefront of it, and by the 75th minute, Argentina were trailing 3-0. At this point, Diego had enough of the constant fouls on him, and in the 86th minute, he retaliated against Batista, resulting in him getting sent off, marking the end of his first ever World Cup. But after this heartbreak, Diego didn't need to fly back to Argentina because he was just announced as Barcelona's latest signing for a world record fee of £5 million. So at only 21 years old, Maradona was ready to take over La Liga, but things wouldn't go exactly to plan, as within his first season, he contracted hepatitis, which ended up sidelining him for 3 months. But despite this, Maradona returned and would manage to end his first season with one of the most iconic performances Barcelona fans have ever seen. During the El Clasico, Spanish football's fiercest rivalry, Maradona put on such a masterful performance and scored such an amazing goal that for the first time in history, Real Madrid fans applauded a Barcelona player, as all they could do was sit back and watch in awe. This is something that has only ever occurred once since then with Ronaldinho, which shows the magnitude of this moment. Maradona and Barcelona finished the season strong, lifting the Copa del Rey and managed to play 35 games and register 23 goals for the season. So heading into his second season at Barcelona, he was hoping to remain fit and get even better. But this is where we are introduced to a villain in the story of Diego Maradona, who goes by the name of Andoni Goicoechea, also known as the Butcher of Bilbao. At the start of the season, Barcelona faced Athletic Bilbao in the league, where Goicoechea went into Maradona with an extremely reckless tackle and ended up breaking his ankle. This tackle could have ended his career on the spot, and Goicoechea still showed no remorse. In fact, he keeps the boot he used on display in his home as a memory of when he injured the best player in the world. After months of treatment and recovery, Maradona returned back to football and was hoping to have a good second half to the season. Maradona was only able to play 23 games where he registered 15 goals, but this season came down to a single match where Maradona and the Butcher would come head-to-head one last time. It was the Copa del Rey final, where Barcelona were playing against Athletic Bilbao, and this game was dramatic to say the least. After receiving a brutal tackle from the Butcher, being racially insulted with comments related to his father, and then, right after losing the match 1-0, he was provoked by Miguel Sola, and Maradona snapped. He started to aggressively talk with the Bilbao player, which sparked emotions in both teams, and this resulted in an all-out brawl. Maradona headbutted Sola, elbowed another player in the face, and then kneed a third player in the head, knocking him out cold. This brawl was played out in front of a crowd of 100,000 spectators, the Spanish king, and more than half of Spain watching from home, and a total of 60 people were injured, including players, coaches, fans, and even photographers. Now, this wasn't Maradona's only controversy at Barcelona, as he had behavioral issues throughout his 2 years, but this was definitely the biggest, and this marked the end of his time in Spain, as the club now wanted him out. Despite this sour ending, Maradona still played some mesmerizing football at Barcelona and still left a great legacy behind, but this was nothing compared to the legacy he was about to create as he was heading into the prime years of his career, along with heading into his greatest controversies. After this Barcelona brawl on the 5th of July 1984, Maradona made a second world record transfer to Italy, where he signed for Napoli for £6.9 million. Now, this move didn't make much sense from the outside because Napoli were not a big club at all. They had only ever won 2 Coppa Italias in their entire history and had never won a league title. The season before this, they just survived relegation, finishing a point above the drop zone. At this time, the Serie A was regarded as the toughest league in the world, with the northern clubs dominating the league, and this north versus south battle in Italy was very significant, as the northern and central cities were richer, and the people felt a sense of entitlement over the southern working-class cities. So, why did Maradona move to Napoli? Well, he saw a city and a team that went through the same struggles he went through growing up. It was a dysfunctional but passionate city. They suffered from mass poverty, unemployment, and organized crime, and Maradona felt a connection to this. On his first day, he said, "I want to become the idol of the poor children of Naples because they are like I was when I lived in Buenos Aires." The connection Maradona felt with the city was a two-way connection, which was really highlighted during the negotiations of this transfer. Barcelona and Napoli had agreed on a fee, but at the last minute, the Barcelona president demanded £500,000 more. Napoli couldn't pay this fee, so the people of Naples decided to go around the streets collecting money, and this poor working-class area was able to raise the $500K necessary to complete the signing. When Maradona finally arrived in Naples, he was presented to a stadium full with 75,000 spectators, as the fans were convinced that their savior had arrived. A local newspaper wrote, "A lack of a mayor, houses, schools, buses, employment, and sanitation. None of this matters because we have Diego Maradona." This was quite literally a match made in heaven, but now it was time for Maradona to prove his worth to the city, and he definitely delivered. In his first season at the club, he took them from a team fighting relegation to a respectable 8th place finish in the league, chipping in with 14 goals in all competitions. And then, in his second season, he stepped up once more, driving Napoli to a 3rd place finish in the Serie A. They were getting close. Maradona was able to inspire hope in the city as he was playing at a level Napoli had never seen before. Nobody could dribble like him, nobody could take a free kick like him, and it seemed like nobody could stop him, especially heading into the 1986 World Cup, as he carried this momentum to almost single-handedly win his country the World Cup. The 1986 World Cup has gone down in history as Diego Maradona was able to produce some of the greatest and also some of the most controversial moments in football history in a single tournament. This was hosted in Mexico, and Maradona was clearly the best and most dynamic player throughout it. In the opener against South Korea, Argentina won 3-1, where Maradona recorded all 3 assists. They drew the second group game to Italy, where Maradona scored the only goal, and they defeated Bulgaria 2-1 in the third group game, where Maradona assisted the winning goal. A 1-0 victory in the round of 16 against Uruguay meant that Argentina would face England in the quarterfinals, and this game went down as one of the most iconic in World Cup history. If there was a single game that could sum up the life of Diego Maradona, it would be this one, as he scored both goals to beat England 2-1. The first goal is known as the Hand of God, where he hit the ball into the net with his hand in a moment of blatant cheating that wasn't caught. And then, just 5 minutes later, he scored what was later voted as the goal of the century, where he dribbled from his own half, beating 5 England players, and then put the keeper on his backside to slot the ball into the net. This controversial goal against England carried more weight than just football, as there was the Falklands War going on at the time between England and Argentina, so this really meant Diego became the villain for the English, but he didn't care. He was on to the semi-final to face Belgium, where he scored both goals in a 2-0 victory, and then, to round the tournament up, Argentina faced West Germany in a thriller of a final, where Argentina won the game 3-2, with a later winner assisted by none other than Diego Maradona, meaning he was lifting the World Cup as the captain of Argentina. Now, this tournament performance from Maradona has to go down as one of the greatest individual performances in any international tournament, as he attempted a tournament best of 90 dribbles, 3 times more than any other player. He was fouled a record of 53 times, and he scored or assisted 10 out of 14 of Argentina's goals, securing him the Golden Boot and cementing himself as a national hero and one of the greatest football players to ever grace the pitch. But despite cementing his Argentinian legacy, Maradona still had a city to save, and as he headed back to Naples and was ready to conquer Italy once and for all. Diego Maradona, now 25 years old and captain of Napoli, returned from the World Cup in the 86-87 and did the impossible with Napoli as he led them to their first ever Serie A title. And not only this, because they also won the Coppa Italia, meaning in a single season, Napoli doubled the amount of trophies in their club's history and won their first ever league title. This title was so significant because no southern Italian team had ever won the league until now, and the city of Napoli truly enjoyed this victory. It was like all the problems they had disappeared. There were weeks of street parties, murals of Maradona were painted around the city, and many newborns were being named in his honor. In the next season, Napoli finished second place, and Maradona finished as the league's top scorer, despite his position being that of an attacking midfielder. In 1989, Napoli finished runners-up in the Serie A for a second time in a row, but this year they achieved European glory as they lifted the UEFA Cup, and Maradona scored a penalty in the final. Then, in 1990, Diego Maradona did it once again, as he captained Napoli to their second Serie A title, whilst chipping in with 18 goals for the season. This meant that for 5 years in a row, Napoli finished in the top 3 in the Serie A, which really shifted the narrative that there was on the southern Italian clubs. These years in Napoli are really looked at as the best years of his career, with moments of genius that would live on forever, like the 40-yard volley against Verona, the hat-trick against Lazio, which included a beautiful chip and a goal directly from a corner, the one-step free kick to secure their first win over Juventus in over 12 years, and so many more. Every opponent Maradona had faced had the same thing to say about him. Paolo Maldini said he was the best opponent he had ever faced. The Brazilian legend Zico said he was the best of the lot, no question. I saw Maradona do things that God himself would doubt were possible. And Michel Platini, the French legend, has even gone as far to compare Zidane to Maradona by saying, what Zidane could do with the ball, Maradona could do with an orange, really highlighting the level at which Diego played at. By this time, he had truly become the king of Naples, a place where football is religion, and Maradona became God. But this went beyond just football, because he was a man of the people, as he had come from a poor background himself. He was politically active and never hid away from defending the poor, which is why he became well known for his off-the-pitch acts of charity, as he often supported local causes and underprivileged kids. But as much as Maradona had this perfect image, there were lots of controversies going on in his life, which, to this point, hadn't been too public. But heading into the 1990 World Cup, Maradona would make one mistake that would cause his career to spiral, and he would just jump from one controversy to another, eventually receiving a 15-month ban from football. So, how did this happen? Well, Maradona captained Argentina heading into the 1990 World Cup hosted in Italy, and as the current world champions, they were hoping to make it 2 in a row. But this time round, Maradona was suffering with an ankle injury, which meant he wasn't able to play to the level of 4 years prior. Argentina lost the opener against Cameroon. They then beat the Soviet Union 2-0, where, yet again, Maradona used his hands to save the day and, yet again, got away with it. This time, it was to prevent a goal, not score one. They then drew against Romania to advance to the knockout stages. They beat Brazil in the round of 16 and then won both the quarterfinals and semifinals on penalties against Yugoslavia and Italy, placing them in the final for the second time in a row. They faced off against West Germany again, but this time the Germans got the better of Diego, and thanks to a controversial penalty, Maradona was left with his silver medal. But the significant moment in this tournament was what happened before the semi-final match against Italy. You see, Maradona wanted to try and get the edge over Italy, and conveniently, this game was being played in his own city, Naples. So in an attempt to get the stadium to support the Argentinians, Maradona called out to the people of Naples, telling them that they should support Argentina and not Italy because of the way the north of Italy has treated Naples over the years. This might have worked on the day to progress to the final, quarterfinals, but this did not sit well with the Italian press. Overnight, Maradona lost all political protection from the press, the judiciary, and even Napoli Football Club, as it had been the case that Maradona had been living a life full of controversy, but this was being kept out of the public eye up until this point. It had been made public that Maradona had been a frequent drug user and loved to party. As a result of this lifestyle he lived, he would often miss or turn up late to training. He would return from holidays late and out of shape, and he would sometimes even miss matches. It had also come out that Diego had links with the Italian mafia, which further fueled the issues. Up until this point, these issues had all been kept relatively quiet, but heading into the 90-91 season, this had become public knowledge. In November of this season, right before a round of 16 European Cup match, Diego decided to go out partying and then refused to travel to Moscow for the team's match. He instead hired a private jet and flew in late, arriving just the night before the game. For once, Maradona was punished for his bad behavior and was placed on the bench for this. He came on as a second-half substitute, but was unable to take Napoli through as they ended up losing on penalties. Later on this season, Maradona was drug tested and the results came back positive, resulting in a 15-month ban from football. And once these results came back, he knew his time at Napoli was over. He was no longer protected by the club or the media, so he fled and flew back to Argentina, marking a sad end to a legendary time in Italy. But unfortunately for Diego, the controversy did not end there. After serving his 15-month ban from football in September of 1992, Diego Maradona announced his return by signing for the Spanish club Sevilla. But this wasn't the same Diego Maradona. He was now 31 years old, and the lifestyle he lived had taken a toll on him. He played 30 games for Sevilla that season and scored 7 goals before transferring back to Argentina to sign for Newell's Old Boys. Now, it was 1994, and Maradona received the call-up to what would be his final international tournament for Argentina as the World Cup was taking place in the United States. Maradona scored in the opening victory against Greece and picked up an assist in the second game, which was a 2-1 victory against Nigeria. But after this game, he was called in for a drug test and, to little surprise, he tested positive, meaning he was sent home from the World Cup and received yet another ban from football. This ended up being the last game he would play for Argentina, finishing his international career with 34 goals, 91 appearances, and 1 World Cup. After this ban, he did return to football and rejoined Boca Juniors for a 2-year stint, playing 32 games, but he was dealing with a variety of issues by this point, notably struggling to control his weight. On the 20th of October 1997, the day finally came where Diego Maradona decided to finally hang up his boots and announce his retirement from professional football. Now, since his retirement, a number of things have happened in Maradona's life. In 2000, Napoli retired Maradona's iconic number 10 jersey in his honor. Also in 2000, Maradona was named as the Player of the Century, garnering 53% of the total votes, whereas Pele only received 18%. In 2003, Argentina's juniors renamed their stadium after the legend. In 2008, Maradona had a 2-year stint as the Argentinian national team manager, taking them to the World Cup quarterfinals in 2010. And then, on the 25th of November 2020, at 60 years of age, Diego Maradona suffered a cardiac arrest and died in his sleep at his home in Buenos Aires. This was a moment that sent a shock through the world of football, as the sport lost arguably its best ever player, and a player who left a legacy like nobody else. After this, Napoli officially renamed their stadium to Stadio Diego Armando Maradona as a tribute to their legend. And it's safe to say that no matter what, Diego Maradona will live on forever in the hearts of football fans. He is eternal.